Captain Dong Ho Kim watched the stars through the cracked window of his ship. 20 years had passed since Earth burned. 20 years since the alien fleets came from the sky and turned his home into glass and ash. He remembered the screaming. He remembered the smell of burning cities. Most of all, he remembered how they begged for mercy and how the aliens laughed. The small ship drifted in empty space far from any trade routes. Dong Ho and his crew were ghosts now. Humans were ghosts. The Galactic Coalition had made sure of that. They hunted humans like animals across the galaxy. They called it cleansing. They said humans were too dangerous to live. Captain called Soo-Jin Park from her station. The woman had once been a doctor on Earth. Now she spent her days studying alien bodies, learning how they worked, finding their weak spots. I'm getting something on the scanner. Dong Ho moved to look at the screen. 3 large ships were approaching. Big ones. HFY War vessels with their black hulls and red markings. The kind of ships that had turned Earth into a grave. How many crew? Dong Ho asked. Soo-Jin worked at her controls. Maybe 3,000. All HFY warriors. Dong Ho smiled, but it was not a happy smile. It was the kind of smile a wolf makes when it sees sheep. Good. Taemin, are you ready? Commander Taemin Lee looked up from his weapons console. His face was covered in scars from the day Earth died. Always ready, Captain. The HFY ships had found what they were looking for. A small human refugee ship floating dead in space. It looked damaged, helpless. Perfect for another easy kill. War Prime Kethvar stood on the bridge of his flagship. He was 8 feet tall with gray skin and 4 arms. His species had ruled the galaxy for 1,000 years. Humans had been around for only a few hundred. In his mind, they were just pests that needed to be removed. Scan the ship, he ordered his crew. 1 life sign, War Prime, human female. The ship appears to be out of power. Kethvar nodded. Another easy victory. Another human to add to his count. He had killed over 500 humans in the past 20 years. Each one brought him closer to promotion. Bring the ship aboard. I want to question the human before we kill her. The HFY ship opened its large cargo bay. Mechanical arms reached out and pulled the small human ship inside. Kethvar walked down to meet his prize. The human ship's door opened with a hiss. A woman stepped out. She was small, maybe 5.5 feet tall. Her black hair was long and dirty. Her clothes were torn. She looked like she had been running for a long time. I am Hee-Won Song, she said in perfect HFY language. I surrender. Kethvar was surprised. Most humans tried to fight or run. This one just stood there, calm as could be. You speak our language, he said. I learned it while you hunted my people, Hee-Won replied. I thought it might be useful. It will not save you. Hee-Won smiled. It was a strange smile. Sad but also something else. Something that made Kethvar feel uncomfortable. I know, she said. That's not why I learned it, then why? So I could tell you something important. Kethvar moved closer. His forearms were ready to grab her if she tried anything. What? Hee-Won looked up at him with dark eyes that seemed much older than her face. You should have killed us all when you had the chance. Before Kethvar could react, the human ship exploded. The blast tore through the cargo bay and into the main ship. Alarms screamed as fire started everywhere. The explosion was not just big, it was designed. It hit the ship's power systems, its weapons, its shields. Everything that kept a HFY warship alive. But Hee-Won Song had not just blown up one ship. The explosion sent a signal to the other 2 HFY vessels. Their own cargo bays, where they had stored captured human debris over the years, suddenly came alive with hidden bombs. All 3 HFY ships died in the space of 10 seconds. From his hiding spot behind a small moon, Dong Ho watched the explosions through his ship's telescope. Soo-Jin counted the debris, 3 ships. All dead, she reported. How many crew lost? Asked Taemin. All of them. 9,000 HFY warriors. Bo-Ra Choi, their engineer, looked up from her console. She was young, barely 25, but she had learned to build bombs that could kill alien warships. Hee-Won's sacrifice worked perfectly. Dong Ho nodded. Hee-Won Song had volunteered for the mission. She knew she would die. They all knew. But 9,000 dead aliens for 1 dead human was a good trade. It was the kind of math they had learned to live with. Send the message, Dong Ho ordered. Soo-Jin activated their secret communication system. Across the galaxy, other human survivors would learn about today's victory. They would know that the HFY could be hurt. They would know that humans were still fighting. The message was short and simple. They sent hunters. We sent ghosts. 9,000 less. Dong Ho looked at his crew. These were not the same humans who had lived on Earth 20 years ago. Those humans had been soft, peaceful, civilized. They had laws and rules and mercy. These humans were different. The galaxy had made them different. Every dead city, every murdered child, every friend lost in the black of space had changed them. The aliens had tried to make humans extinct. Instead, they had made them into something new, something dangerous. Set course for the Kepler station, Dong Ho ordered. We have more work to do. As their ship moved away from the debris of the Vorthak fleet, none of them looked back. There was no point. The dead were dead, alien and human alike. What mattered now was the living. What mattered was making sure the galaxy remembered that humans were still here, and that they were no longer prey. In the darkness between the stars, other human ships received the message. Other crews like Dong Ho's, survivors who had learned to fight in ways the aliens never expected. They had been scattered, broken, almost destroyed, but they had not given up. The hunt had made them stronger. Every loss had taught them something new. Every death had shown them what they needed to become. The aliens had wanted to cleanse the galaxy of humans. Instead, they had created something that would haunt their nightmares for generations to come. 6 months after the Vorthak fleet died, strange reports started coming from coalition ships across 17 different star systems. The reports all said the same impossible things. Humans were appearing on their ships. Humans who walked through walls. Humans who spoke in dead languages. Humans who vanished before anyone could shoot them. Admiral Zeftol of the Kalani Navy read the reports with growing fear. The Kalani looked like giant lizards with blue scales and yellow eyes. They had been part of the coalition that destroyed Earth. Now their ships were seeing ghosts. This cannot be real, he told his aide. Humans cannot walk through walls. His aide, a younger Kalani named Veltar, held up a datapad. 17 ships, Admiral. All report the same things. Humans appearing in sealed rooms, speaking words that make no sense, then disappearing. Zeftol looked at the latest report. The crew of the battleship Star Render had found a human woman in their weapons room. She was sitting on the floor, singing a song in an Earth language. When they tried to capture her, she looked at them and said, "Your children will know our names." Then she walked through the wall and vanished. The weapons room had no doors, no windows, no way in or out except through solid metal walls. "Send me Captain Mordek," Zeftol ordered. Captain Mordek commanded the Star Render. He was a tough soldier who had fought in the Earth War. When he arrived at Zeftol's office, his hands were shaking. "Tell me what happened," the Admiral said. Mordek sat down heavily. "We were patrolling the Epsilon sector. Everything normal. Then Velkris was checking the weapons room and started screaming." What did he see? A human. Young woman, maybe 20 years old. Black hair, dark clothes. She was sitting cross-legged on the floor singing. Singing what? We don't know. It was in their language. But it made us feel. Mordek paused, looking for words. It made us feel like something terrible was watching us. Zeftol leaned forward. Then what? Velkris called security. 4 guards came running. The human looked up at them and smiled. She said something about our children knowing human names. Then she stood up and walked straight through the wall. That's impossible. I know, Admiral. But I saw the recording. She didn't use any tools, didn't touch any controls. She just walked through solid metal like it wasn't there. Similar reports came from other ships. A human man appeared in the engine room of the cruiser Death Wind. He spoke to the engineers in their own language, but the words were wrong. He told them their engines would fail when they needed them most. Then he vanished. Another ship found a human in their food storage. He was an old man with gray hair and sad eyes. He told the crew he remembered when their world was green and beautiful. Then he asked them why they had helped destroy Earth. Before anyone could answer, he was gone. The strangest report came from the destroyer, Bloodstar. A human child, no more than 10 years old, appeared on their bridge during a staff meeting. She looked at each officer and said their names. Names they had never told anyone. Secret names from their childhood. Then she said, "I know who you are. I know where you live. I know where your families sleep." She vanished, leaving the entire bridge crew in panic. What the Coalition didn't know was that these weren't ghosts. They were humans using stolen alien technology in ways its creators never imagined. Jiho Kang crouched in the ventilation system of the Coalition battleship Iron Fist. He was wearing a suit that let him phase through solid matter. The technology had been taken from a Sithrak research station. The Sithrak had used it to study the inside of asteroids. Jiho used it to study the inside of enemy ships. He waited until the night shift was alone in the navigation room. Then he stepped through the wall. The Sithrak navigator looked up and screamed. Sithrak looked like giant insects with too many legs and clicking mouths. This one's name was Tikvar. "Hello, Tikvar," Jiho said in perfect Sithrak language. "Do you remember the Morrison colony?" Tikvar reached for his weapon. Jiho didn't stop him. The plasma bolt went right through his phased body and hit the wall behind him. "I was there," Jiho continued. "I was 12 years old. I watched your people burn my school. My teacher tried to protect us. Do you know what your soldiers did to her?" "You're dead," Tikvar clicked. "Humans are all dead." "No," Jiho said, stepping closer. "We're very much alive. We're just not the same humans you tried to kill." He reached into his coat and pulled out a small device. "This is a memory recorder. It belonged to my teacher, Mrs. Chen. It recorded her last moments. Would you like to see?" Without waiting for an answer, Jiho activated the device. The room filled with holographic images. A human woman trying to protect children from Sithrak soldiers. The screaming, the burning. Tikvar watched in horror as the recording showed what his people had done 20 years ago. "We kept all the recordings," Jiho said softly. "Every burned city, every murdered family, every time you laughed while we died. We remember everything." The recording ended. Jiho put the device away. "Tell your friends we're coming home," he said. Then he walked through the wall and disappeared. Similar visits happened on dozens of ships. Young Su-Yoon, a human who had studied alien psychology, for 20 years knew exactly how to break their minds. He appeared to Coalition officers in their sleep. He whispered their names and the names of the humans they had killed. He showed them images of Earth before it burned. So Young Han, a combat engineer, left small devices on enemy ships. The devices didn't explode. They just played sounds. Children crying. People calling for help. The last messages sent from Earth before the planet died. The Coalition started going crazy with fear. Ship crews refused to patrol alone. Officers slept with lights on. Some ships turned around and went home rather than risk meeting human ghosts. But the humans weren't trying to destroy ships. Not yet. They were doing something worse. They were destroying hope. They were making the Coalition afraid to sleep, afraid to be alone, afraid that humans might be watching them at any moment. Admiral Zeftul called an emergency meeting with the other Coalition leaders. War Prime Kethtar of the Vorthak Empire and Queen Silthara of the Sithrak Hive joined him by quantum communication. "The humans are using our own technology against us," Zeftul reported. "Phase shifters, memory recorders, psychological warfare devices, things they shouldn't even understand." "How did they learn to use our equipment?" Queen Silthara asked. Kethtar's image flickered on the screen. "They had 20 years to study everything they captured. 20 years to learn our weaknesses." "This is impossible," Silthara insisted. "They were almost extinct. A few thousand survivors at most. A few thousand survivors who hate us more than anything in the galaxy," Zeftul replied, "and who have had 20 years to plan their revenge." The meeting was interrupted by an alarm. A human had appeared on Zeftul's own flagship. Security found him in the Admiral's private quarters, sitting at his desk, reading his personal files. When the guards arrived, the human looked up calmly. He was middle-aged with kind eyes that held no kindness at all. "Admiral Zeftul," the human said, "I've been reading about your family, your mate Velana, your children Zektar and Milva. They live on Kalani Prime, don't they? In the Crystal Gardens district?" Zeftul went cold with fear. His family's location was top secret. How do you know that? The human smiled. We know everything, Admiral. We've been watching you for 20 years. Learning about you. Your habits, your fears, your loved ones. He stood up and walked toward the wall. Sleep well, Admiral. And remember, we know where your children sleep. Then he was gone, walking through solid metal like it was air. That night, Zeftul couldn't sleep. Every shadow looked like a human. Every sound might be footsteps. He called his family on Kalani Prime, but the communication was cut short by static. In the static, he could hear something that made his blood freeze. Children singing human lullabies. The Great Hall of the Galactic Assembly had not seen such fear in 1,000 years. Representatives from 300 worlds gathered in emergency session. At the center sat the Coalition's 3 most powerful leaders, War Prime Kethtar of the Vorthak, Admiral Zeftul of the Kalani, and Queen Silthara of the Sithrak. The hall buzzed with nervous whispers. In the past 6 months, 17 Coalition worlds had gone dark. Not destroyed, just silent. Their defense fleets had vanished. Their communication systems had stopped working. Some worlds reported strange messages appearing on their screens before everything went dead. Order, called Speaker Velmoth, an ancient being who had run the assembly for 3 centuries. We are here to discuss the human situation. War Prime Kethtar stood up. His forearms moved as he spoke, a sign of great anger among his people. There is no human situation. There are only terrorists using stolen technology. Terrorists who have made 17 worlds disappear, said Representative Qualton from the Outer Rim. Terrorists who appear and vanish like ghosts. Queen Silthara's voice clicked through her translator. We underestimated their numbers. Intelligence reports suggest there may be 50,000 humans still alive. 50,000, said another representative, against 3 trillion Coalition citizens. How is this possible? The answer came from an unexpected source. The hall's main screen flickered to life, showing the face of a human man. He had gray hair and tired eyes. When he spoke, his voice was calm and polite. Because you taught us well, he said. Security guards rushed toward the communication controls, but nothing they did could cut the signal. The human continued speaking. My name is Woojin Lim. I represent what remains of humanity. I was a diplomat before you destroyed my world. I spent 5 years in your prison camps learning your languages, studying your cultures, understanding how you think. War Prime Kethtar stepped forward. How did you access our communications? Woojin smiled sadly. We've been inside your systems for years. Watching you. Learning from you. You see, when you hunt someone for 20 years, you learn all their tricks. The hall erupted in angry voices. Representatives demanded to know how humans had broken their most secure systems. Others wanted to know how many humans were really alive. Woojin waited for them to quiet down. Then he spoke again. We come to you today with an offer, a chance to end this without more death. You dare threaten us? Queen Silthara clicked. I'm not threatening anyone, Woojin replied. I'm offering you terms. Complete withdrawal from human space. Return of all captured human artifacts and remains. Recognition of human sovereignty over our original territories. And reparations for the genocide you committed. The hall exploded in laughter. The idea that a few thousand human survivors could demand anything from the mighty coalition seemed ridiculous. War Prime Kethtar's voice boomed over the noise. You are vermin, pests. We will not negotiate with the remains of a dead species. Woojin's expression didn't change. Then you choose the hard way. You have no leverage, Admiral Zeftul said. No fleets, no worlds, no power. No, Woojin agreed, but we have something you don't understand. We have nothing left to lose, and that makes us very dangerous. What could you possibly do to us? Queen Silthara demanded. Woojin looked directly at her through the screen. Tonight, you'll find out. The signal cut off. Security teams rushed to trace the transmission but found nothing. The human had been broadcasting from everywhere and nowhere at once. Representative Qualton turned to the coalition leaders. Perhaps we should consider their terms. Never, War Prime Kethtar growled. We do not negotiate with dead races. That night, the coalition learned what 50,000 desperate humans could do when they had nothing left to lose. It started with the Vorthak homeworld. The planet's defense grid, the most powerful in the galaxy, suddenly turned on the capital city. Orbital weapons platforms that had protected Vorthon for 1,000 years began firing on government buildings. Within an hour, the entire Vorthak leadership was dead. The Imperial Palace, where War Prime Kethtar had been born, became a crater of melted stone and twisted metal. On Kalani Prime, something worse happened. The planet's weather control system went crazy. Storms that should have been impossible formed over major cities. Lightning struck with surgical precision, hitting military bases, government centers, and communication hubs. Admiral Zeftul's family compound, hidden in the Crystal Gardens, vanished under a bolt of energy that left nothing but glass. The Sithrak hive world faced a different horror. The planet's biological systems, designed to support trillions of insect-like beings, began producing poison instead of air. Queen Silthara died in her own throne room, choking on the toxic atmosphere her own technology was creating. All three attacks happened at exactly the same moment, coordinated across thousands of light years. It should have been impossible. The Coalition had the best communications in the galaxy. How could humans coordinate better than species who had ruled space for centuries? The answer came in a second broadcast. This time, Wu Jin Lim appeared on every screen in Coalition space. Every television, every computer, every communication device showed his face. 20 years ago, you tried to teach us a lesson, he said. You wanted to show the galaxy what happened to species that didn't follow Coalition rules. You burned our world. You hunted our people. You laughed while our children died. Behind him, images appeared. Videos of Earth burning. Coalition soldiers killing human families. War Prime Kethtar himself, younger then, standing over human graves and smiling. We were peaceful then. Wu Jin continued. We believed in laws and mercy and justice. You taught us that such beliefs were weakness. You showed us that only the strong survive. The images changed. Now they showed the ruins of the 3 Coalition capitals, the burning remains of palaces and power centers that had stood for millennia. So we became strong, Wu Jin said, stronger than you ever imagined. You scattered us across the galaxy, thinking distance would make us weak. Instead, it made us everywhere at once. You hunted us thinking fear would break us. Instead, it taught us to hunt better than you. New images appeared. Coalition ships exploding. Defense platforms turning on their own worlds. Government leaders dying in their own secure bunkers. For 20 years, we studied you. We learned your languages, your technology, your weaknesses. While you celebrated your victory over humanity, we were becoming something new, something you created but can't control. The images stopped. Wu Jin looked directly into the camera with eyes that held no warmth at all. We offered you terms. You refused. You called us vermin and pests. You said you would not negotiate with a dead race. He leaned forward. But we're not dead. We're very much alive. And now you'll learn what happens when vermin decide to fight back. The broadcast ended, but its message was clear. Humanity had returned to the galaxy, not as the peaceful explorers they had once been, but as something darker, something that 20 years of persecution had forged into a weapon. In the ruins of the Coalition capitals, survivors huddled in shelters and listened to emergency broadcasts. The great fleets that had once protected their worlds were gone, turned into scrap by their own defense systems. The leaders who had ordered humanity's destruction were dead, killed by the very technology they had used to build their empire. And somewhere in the dark between the stars, human ships that had once been prey now moved like predators, hunting for the next lesson to teach their former hunters. The galaxy had wanted to see humanity extinct. Instead, they had created something that would haunt their nightmares for generations to come. The hunt was over. The war had begun. The Coalition's desperate counterattack came 6 months after their capitals burned. What remained of their fleets gathered at the fortress world of Kara 7, a planet covered in weapons and protected by energy shields that could stop a star from exploding. General Nexval, the highest-ranking Vorthak officer still alive, stood before 1,000 ship commanders. His voice carried the rage of a species that had ruled the galaxy for centuries and now faced extinction at the hands of creatures they had considered pests. The humans think they have won, he growled. They think their tricks and stolen technology make them our equals. Today we show them what real power looks like. The plan was simple. Use every remaining Coalition ship to hunt down human bases and destroy them completely. No prisoners, no mercy. Total extermination. What General Nexval didn't know was that Captain Dong-Ho Kim had been waiting for exactly this moment. For 20 years, humans had run and hidden and died. Now it was time to stop running. The first coalition fleet found humans at the abandoned mining station on Hela's Rock. 50 coalition ships surrounded the small asteroid base where maybe 300 humans lived. It should have been an easy victory. Captain Dong-Ho Kim stood on the bridge of his ship, the Earth's Revenge, and watched the coalition vessels approach. Behind him, Commander Taemin Lee prepared weapons that the aliens had never seen before. "They're hailing us," reported Sujin Park. "Put them through." General Nexval's image appeared on the screen. "Surrender now and we will kill you quickly." Dong-Ho looked at the alien general with eyes that held no fear. "We tried surrendering 20 years ago. It didn't work out well for us. Then you die slowly." "Maybe," Dong-Ho said, "but you die first." The coalition fleet opened fire with enough weapons to destroy a planet. Energy beams and missiles filled the space around Hela's Rock. When the light faded, they expected to see debris and dead humans. Instead, they saw something impossible. The human base was still there, protected by shields that should not exist. Worse, the asteroid had opened like a flower, revealing weapon systems hidden inside the rock itself. "What is that?" General Nexval demanded. His sensor officer's voice shook. "Sir, the entire asteroid is a weapon. It's been hollowed out and filled with human technology." The asteroid spoke with Dong-Ho's voice, broadcast across all coalition frequencies. "You taught us to hide. You taught us to run. You taught us to survive with nothing, so we learned to turn nothing into everything." The first human weapons fired. They were unlike anything the coalition had ever seen. Energy beams that passed through shields like they weren't there. Missiles that teleported inside enemy ships before exploding. Most terrifying of all, weapons that learned from each shot, adapting to whatever defenses they encountered. The coalition fleet started dying, not slowly, not with brave last stands and heroic sacrifices. They died efficiently, professionally, like animals in a slaughterhouse. General Nexval watched 10 of his ships explode in as many seconds. "How is this possible?" Dr. Sujin Park's voice answered him from across space. She had once been a gentle healer on Earth. 20 years of war had turned her into something else entirely. "We had 20 years to study your technology," she said. 20 years to improve it. 20 years to imagine what we would do when you came for us again." Another wave of human weapons fired. Coalition ships that had survived the destruction of 100 worlds died like insects under a boot. "You made us into scientists and soldiers and killers," Sujin continued. "Every human you murdered taught the rest of us something new about how you die." The battle lasted 17 minutes. When it ended, 50 coalition ships had become expanding clouds of gas and metal. The human base had not received a single serious hit. But that was only the beginning. At Kara 7, another human waited in the shadows. Yoon Ji-shin had been 8 years old when Earth burned. She was 28 now and had never known a day of peace. What the galaxy had done to her and her people had stripped away everything soft and human about her. What remained was a perfect instrument of violence. She led the attack on the coalition's main fortress. Her assault team moved through the facility's defenses like ghosts made of death. They didn't take prisoners. They didn't accept surrenders. They killed everything that moved and some things that didn't. General Nexval found himself trapped in his command center as human soldiers cut their way through his guards. When the door exploded inward, he expected to face an army. Instead, he saw one small human woman with dark eyes and weapons that hummed with alien energy. "I am General Nexval," he said, trying to sound brave. "I demand to be treated according to the laws of war." Yoon Ji-shin looked at him like he was something she might scrape off her boot. "Laws of war." Her voice was quiet, almost gentle. "Did you follow laws of war when you burned the school on Terra Nova? Did you follow laws of war when you executed prisoners on Cygni Station?" She stepped closer. Her weapon remained pointed at his chest. "I was at Terra Nova," she said. "I watched your soldiers kill my teacher. She begged you to spare the children. Do you remember what you told her?" Nexval's forearms shook. He did remember. He remembered laughing while the human female died. "We told her that vermin don't deserve mercy," Yoonji continued. "We told her that the galaxy would be cleaner without human filth." She raised her weapon. "Today you learn what it feels like to be vermin." The blast that killed General Nexval was heard throughout the fortress. It was a sound that coalition survivors would remember in their nightmares for the rest of their lives. Across the galaxy, similar scenes played out. Human forces that had remained hidden for 20 years emerged like a plague of death. They hit coalition bases, supply lines, refugee camps, and civilian targets with equal ruthlessness. But the most terrifying human was one most coalition soldiers never saw. Jae-hyun was a quiet man who preferred to work alone. His specialty was information, specifically getting information from people who didn't want to give it. War Commander Klixta of the Sithrak had been captured during the battle for the Helix Nebula. He was a tough soldier who had endured pain that would kill most species. He thought he could resist human interrogation. He was wrong. Jae-hyun sat across from the alien in a small, clean room. There were no torture devices, no threatening weapons, just 2 chairs and a table with a cup of water. "I know about your hive cluster on Thrace 9, Jae-hyun said conversationally. 17 billion Sithrak civilians. Your mates, your offspring, your elders. Klixta's insect features clicked with defiance. You cannot threaten me with civilians. Humans are too weak for genocide. Jae-hyun smiled sadly. 20 years ago you would have been right. Humans were too civilized for genocide. Too moral. Too soft. He leaned forward. But you fixed that problem for us. He pressed a button on the table. The room's wall became a screen showing orbital images of Thrace 9. That's your homeworld 12 hours ago, Jae-hyun said. Beautiful, isn't it? All those cities. All those families. Another image appeared. The same planet, but different. The cities were dark. The seas were boiling. The atmosphere was full of poison clouds. And that's your homeworld 6 hours ago. We used your own terraforming equipment against you. The same machines you used to build paradise we used to create hell. Klixta stared at the images in horror. 17 billion of his people dead or dying. This is impossible. You couldn't have gotten past our defenses. We didn't need to get past them, Jae-hyun replied. We turned them off from the inside. You see, we've had people working in your government for 15 years. Humans who learned to look like Sithrak, think like Sithrak, act like Sithrak. They've been waiting for orders. More images appeared. Other Sithrak worlds, all showing the same destruction. 43 worlds, Jae-hyun said quietly. 200 billion Sithrak civilians, all dead in the same hour. Klixta made a sound no human had ever heard before. It was the noise a Sithrak makes when its entire world ends. Now, Jae-hyun continued, I need information about coalition military codes. You can give them to me, or I can show you what we're planning to do to the remaining Sithrak colonies. Klixta broke. In 10 minutes, he gave Jae-hyun everything he wanted to know. When it was over, the alien looked at his interrogator with something beyond hatred. What have you become? He whispered. Jae-hyun stood up and walked toward the door. We became what you made us, he said without turning around. You wanted us extinct. Instead, you made us into the most dangerous predators in the galaxy. He paused at the door. The difference between us and you is simple. When we begged for mercy, you laughed. When you beg for mercy... He looked back at the broken alien. Well, we'll see. The door closed, leaving Klixta alone with images of his dead civilization and the terrible knowledge that humanity had become something far worse than anything the Coalition had ever imagined. 5 years later, the galaxy had learned to fear the sight of human ships on their long-range sensors. The Coalition that had once ruled 300 worlds now existed in scattered enclaves, always looking over their shoulders, always wondering if today would be the day the humans came for them. Daeun Kim was 23 years old and had never known peace. She was born during the Resistance, raised in hidden bases, taught to fight before she could properly walk. To her, war wasn't something that happened. It was simply the way the universe worked. She stood in the command center of New Terra Station, humanity's first permanent base since Earth burned. Through the massive windows, she could see human ships patrolling space that had once belonged to the Vorthak Empire. Below them, on the planet's surface, and sprawled the first human city built in 25 years. Ma'am, called her aide, Changmin Seo. The Kalani delegation has arrived. Daeun nodded. At 23, she was one of the youngest administrators in human space. The older generation, survivors like Captain Dong-ho Kim and Dr. Soo-jin Park, had spent so many years fighting that they struggled with the idea of ruling. It fell to people like Daeun, who had been shaped by war but not broken by it, to build something new from the ashes. The Kalani delegation was led by former Admiral Zeftul. The proud military leader who had once commanded fleets was now a tired old reptile, with scales that had lost their blue shine. His uniform was clean but patched. His escorts were not soldiers but translators and clerks. Administrator Kim, he said, using the human title that still sounded strange in his mouth. I come to request additional food supplies for Kilani Refuge Station. Daun gestured for him to sit. The chair was designed for Kilani anatomy. Humans had learned to accommodate their former enemies' needs. How many refugees this month? 3,000. Mostly families from the outer colonies. They've been living on emergency rations for weeks. Daun made notes on her tablet. Medical supplies? We're running low on everything. The children especially need nutrition supplements. It was strange, Daun thought, how quickly things had changed. 5 years ago, Zeftel had been hunting human children across the galaxy. Now he was begging humans to help feed Kilani children. I'll authorize increased food shipments, she said. And I'm sending Dr. Park's medical team. They specialize in Kilani physiology. Zeftel's yellow eyes showed relief and something else. Shame, maybe. Or confusion. Why? He asked quietly. Why do you help us? Daun looked out the window at the city below. Humans and aliens worked together in the streets. Not as equals, that would take generations, but as people trying to survive in a galaxy that had been broken by war. Because someone has to remember what we used to be, she said. Later that day, Daun met with the Human Security Council. The faces around the table were familiar. The survivors who had fought the long war and now struggled with the strange burden of victory. Captain Dong-Ho Kim, now Fleet Admiral of the Human Defense Force, looked older than his years. The man who had once blown up Vorthak fleets now spent his days making sure refugee ships had safe passage. Dr. Sujin Park had traded her weapons for medical research again, but her laboratories now studied ways to heal alien diseases, rather than create new ways to kill aliens. Commander Tae Min. Lee ran the protection zones, vast areas of space where former coalition species lived under human rule. It was a job that required the same tactical brilliance he had once used for war, but pointed in a different direction. The Sithrak colonies are requesting permission to expand their agricultural zones, Tae Min reported. They need more space to feed their remaining population. Approved, Daun said. What about the Vorthak? More difficult. They're still having trouble with the concept of asking for permission instead of taking what they want. Dong-Ho spoke up. Their young ones are adapting better. The children who were born after the war ended, they understand the new rules. And the adults? Some of them, Sujin said quietly, still think this is temporary. They believe that someday they'll be strong enough to return to the old ways. Daun nodded. She had heard the whispers in the refugee camps. Stories about coalition leaders who spoke of rebuilding their fleets, of finding allies in the outer rim, of eventually reclaiming their lost empire. Are we making a mistake? She asked. Our parents fought so hard to survive. Now we're feeding and protecting the children of the people who tried to kill us all. The room was quiet for a long moment. These were questions they all wrestled with. Questions that had no easy answers. It was Dong-Ho who finally spoke. Your mother once told me something, he said. Daun's mother had died in the resistance, killed during a raid on a coalition supply depot. She said that the difference between justice and revenge is what you do after you win. 3 days later, Daun found herself dealing with the kind of problem that would have seemed impossible a decade ago. A coalition patrol ship had been discovered in human space without permission. By law, that was an act of war that could be punished by death. The ship's captain was brought before her in restraints. He was a young Vorthak warrior named Kektar, barely out of military school. His forearms trembled with fear as he stood before the human administrator. Why were you in our space? Daun asked. We were lost, Kektar said. Navigation error. We didn't mean to violate your borders. Daun studied the report. The ship had been found near the Arcturus Nebula, far from any coalition territory. Their navigation logs had been wiped, but human technicians had recovered enough data to piece together their real mission. You are heading for the Centauri system, she said. That's where we have refugee camps for your people. Kektar's silence was answer enough. You were going to attack civilians, Daun continued. Your own people. Vorthak families who chose to accept human protection rather than starve in coalition space. They are traitors, Kektar said, finding his voice. They have dishonored our species by accepting charity from vermin. The words hung in the air like poison. Around the room, human guards shifted uncomfortably. These were soldiers who had fought in the war, who had lost family and friends to coalition attacks. The old Daun, the one raised on stories of earth burning, wanted to order Kektar's execution. Instead, she did something that surprised everyone, including herself. Changmin, she said to her aide, set up a communication link to the Centauri refugee camp. The wall screen activated, showing a crowded settlement on a green world. The camera focused on a small group of Vorthak families, adults and children living in prefabricated human shelters. Tell me, Dayun said to Kektar, which of these people deserve to die for accepting our help? The camera showed an elderly Vorthak female teaching human children how to prepare traditional Vorthak food. A Vorthak male working alongside humans to repair water recycling systems. Vorthak children playing games with human children, all of them laughing in the universal language of young beings having fun. These are not warriors, Daun said quietly. These are not the people who destroyed Earth. These are just families trying to survive in a galaxy that has forgotten how to make peace. Kektar stared at the screen. Something in his expression began to change. You want to kill them because they chose life over pride, Daun continued. Because they decided that feeding their children was more important than preserving the glory of an empire that no longer exists. She stood up and walked closer to the young warrior. Do you know what the difference is between us and you? Kektar shook his head. When we won the war, we had a choice. We could become the monsters you said we were, or we could become something better than what you made us. She gestured at the screen. We chose to be better, but you destroyed our worlds, Kektar protested. You killed billions of our people. Yes, Daun said simply. We did. And every day we have to live with that choice. Every day we have to decide whether that makes us heroes or villains. She walked back to her desk and sat down. You're free to go. Kektar stared at her in confusion. What? Your ship will be repaired and given enough supplies to return to Coalition space. You and your crew are free to leave, but I came here to kill your people. Yes, Dayon agreed. But you failed. Now you get to go home and think about why you failed. Think about what kind of galaxy you want to live in. One where people are killed for accepting help, or one where enemies can become something else. As the guards escorted the confused Vortek warrior away, Changmin approached Daun's desk. Ma'am, he said quietly, are you sure about this? He'll probably just try again. Dayun looked out the window at the city below, humans and aliens working together, building something new from the ruins of the old galaxy. Maybe, she said, or maybe he'll go home and tell his people what he saw here. Maybe he'll tell them about Vorthak children playing with human children, about enemies who choose mercy over revenge. She turned back to her aide. The question isn't whether he'll try again. The question is whether we want to be the kind of species that gives people the chance to choose differently. That night, Daun stood on her balcony and watched the stars. Somewhere out there, Coalition ships still moved through the darkness carrying people who hated humanity and dreamed of revenge. But somewhere else, human ships were delivering food to refugee camps and medical supplies to former